You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is September 23rd, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for subscribing and listening to our podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Monday?
Spencer, hello. I am doing quite well. We are actually really all the way into season 1 now, aren't we? It took about a month, to get it all the way out, but I think, the slow burn worked out pretty well, I think. It was nice to have all that extra time with early access, as controversial as that was at the exact moment in time. But having all that extra time to just kind of experience what the expansion had to offer, do all the kind of outdoor content, more casual stuff, level up tunes, and then, just kind of ease into it. I think that worked out really well for me. So I'm glad that they did it that way. But now all that's out the window because, we're into season 1, and that means like, okay, I got to pick and choose like who I can spend time playing this week or whatever. I'm not leveling anybody else at the moment is what I'm saying. I already have more tunes than I can manage at max level at the moment. So, but that's cool because it's not going to stay that way forever, right? Out of the gate, it's just like, okay, full raid schedule, keys whenever you can get them in. Got to prioritize those tier 8 delves on the main.
Yep.
All that stuff takes time, and I only have so much time to play. So, yep. I think being able to level tunes easily and have all these kind of systems to support moving stuff between characters or whatever is amazing, and it's going to pay dividends forever at this point. But, man, for the next couple weeks, months probably, it's just full steam ahead on the Warrior, I think.
Yeah, I almost wish that there was a way. I know there's no way to feed vault loot to alts in that sense, or to each other, or bounce it around or anything like that, because you just end up in a situation where people are playing a bunch of characters to feed one character to make that character stronger. But I almost wish there was an option to, like, if you got a piece of loot and you chose to drop it by one entire track, you could then send it as a warbound item to one of your characters. Like, it became a warbound thing. If you dropped it by an entire track, that would be interesting to me.
That would be kind of cool, right? Yeah.
Because then it's a situation where you're not, necessarily feeding your main character at the beginning of a season all this crazy loot because you've done all this stuff on your alts. It would be very unlikely that you'd be playing all these characters doing high enough content that you were then able to drop the rewards by an entire track and send it over to your main character and still have that character get this huge benefit from it. So I don't know. I wish there was something like that, because I'm with you that, like, I enjoy playing alts. I leveled another character this week. So unlike you, I was still doing that. So I have 3 now. My mage is now max level. I did that, actually finished that today, earlier today. And that character is tailoring enchanting. And so that character had a lot of fun actually leveling up through creating things, because the nice thing about professions in this expansion, there's not a lot of nice things, but there is a nice thing about professions in this expansion, and that is that if you max out a character or start leveling a character and hit 70 and get into the new expansion, you can immediately go around and gather all the treasures, and that's a lot of knowledge points. You can then go around, if you have your renown high enough, and buy all the renown booklets, which is also a lot of knowledge points. And then as you're crafting the new things, you get enough of the actual currency to go to the Crafters Guild and buy the books from the Crafters Guild for at least the first book or so for each of those. And that's even more knowledge as well. And then, of course, you're getting all the knowledge from just actually crafting new things the whole time. So you can actually get pretty deep into a profession pretty quickly, and you earn experience every time you craft something. So I actually leveled from 70 to 75 just crafting things, which was really interesting.
That's cool.
So
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was kind of a neat way to level a character, and I enjoyed that. And then from 75 up, I just started doing world quests, because the other thing I was doing with alts is basically going, all right, once I've gotten my alts to the point where world quests are no longer really a thing outside of like the keystone fragments or maybe valor stones, depending on where that character's at as far as valor stones go, I'm then like, okay, well, my mage, who's my newest character, is now just, and also is a enchanter slash tailor, is now just doing all of my world quests for me whenever they come up. They just clear the map because they'll disenchant any greens and whatnot they get that they can't use. And every time they're killing something, they have a chance of getting cloth. So then they get more cloth. So then they're able to craft more things. Whereas my alchemist, herbalist, and my jewel crafter miner really don't benefit from going out and doing those sorts of things, other than they pick up nodes when they're on the map when they're going to do stuff. But I like doing dedicated gathering runs when I'm doing gathering runs, because I drink one of the perception files that's out there so I can see all the camouflaged nodes. If people aren't doing that, by the way, it like doubles the amount of nodes that you find. It's incredibly worthwhile to get those files, even if you just get the rank ones. They give you a whole bunch of perception, which helps you get the higher end goods that you're gathering, while at the same time also revealing all those camouflage nodes. So definitely worthwhile getting those. But yeah, in general, I think this has been a pretty great week. This week kicked off for me with, I guess the last time we talked was before we did our raid last week. So, or did our last raid day last week, last Monday. So we did not get Queen down on Heroic. We did get Silken Court. So we are 8 of 8 normal, 7 of 8 Heroic. Last night we went in and cleared all of normal and up to Queen again. So we're now 7 of 8 Heroic again. So tonight we'll raid with a full raid night just to spend on Heroic Queen and hopefully get her down in the first half of the raid. We only raid for 3 hours. And then we've also doing prep for the first 3 bosses on Mythic, so we'll probably knock those out as soon as we can as well, so that we start getting some of those Mythic pieces inside of our Great Vaults as well, which would be great, and sort of help the team progress along. It's going really well. I did Boomy still primarily as my main, although last night we had a healer out, so I was healing the back half of Heroic, and Resto Druid is not in a great place, I have to say. There is definitely some areas where it can shine, but as soon as you put, evokers and holy priests and paladins and resto shamans next to a resto druid, you immediately see the shortcomings between the two. So it's an interesting thing to be like, oh, okay, I understand why they buffed them last week, and I understand why 4% wasn't enough and they need more. So hopefully we see some of that come in for them as well. I know Boomkin is in a slightly better place. We still have a lot of outliers happening there. Enhancement Shaman is massively performing ahead of other classes at the moment, which is really interesting to see. We still have Hunters and Warriors at the top, which I don't think is a bad thing. Arcane Mage is still performing really well. So we're starting to get that, like, Hunters, Warriors, and Arcane Mages kind of float together to a certain degree. Enhancement Shamans are out front by like 30%, it feels like, most of the time. And then Boomy's somewhere below that. Rogues also perform really high up there. It depends on how well the rogue player is, but they also are hitting up pretty high with the Warriors and whatnot. So good to see the class balance coming into play. Our locks have been doing okay as well. So I feel like there's just a couple outliers that they need to trim back, and hopefully that happens over the next week. We did have some hot fixes come in today, so we'll talk about those later in the show. But yeah, raid was a lot of fun. And how was your raid time this past week? Or at least
it was really good. Yeah.
Are you done it? Are you done week now?
Yeah, well, our week is finished. Yeah. Finished up last night. One of the biggest challenges that I'm having with raid at the moment is just juggling the roster. It's tough. I'm getting 36 plus signups for every raid night. Yeah. And I got a couple people that just have sort of voluntarily benched themselves, or at least like 1 or 2 guys I can think of off the top of my head. They're like, hey, listen, I don't really need spots right now. Just, I'll let you know. Yeah. Which I really appreciate. And some people have been cool about, like, I'm just going to bench myself for normal night or whatever. So
right.
That helps. I have 8 healers in rotation. So I'm like bringing 6 and, benching 2, or one of them has pretty much just been, voluntarily benched so far. So it's a process, it's something I'm not really used to dealing with as like the raid leader. And so I've kind of taken a different approach to it. What I do is I get on everybody's case about signing up, for the events. The events post right after raids finish for the following week. And then like Friday afternoon, Friday evening, there's like a comp tool that we have in the ZTH Discord, so I get like a little table, and I can pull everybody who signed up into the table and set up my comps and set up who's going to be benched or whatever.
Right.
So I've been using that to just like get out in front of it. Like, listen, here's who I'm bringing for normal and for heroic. If you need invites, like check the community calendar. They do like a Sunday afternoon kind of casual run in ZTH. They had to split it into 2 pretty much full raids yesterday, and they both full cleared. So, we have plenty of options for my overflow, which is nice, because in the past it used to be like, well, you can't raid with us this week, so good luck pugging,
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just communicate. I think that's the key to avoiding kind of friction. And obviously people are going to be disappointed if they get set out, but there's just nothing I can do about it. I can't bend the rules of the game. I can't bring more than 30 people. So
yeah, and in a week or two, you're going to start finding that there's more and more people who can sit because they just don't need the gear off of certain bosses anymore. So there's at least that consideration that can start happening. It'd be almost interesting to see what a sign up looked like, not just for raid night, but was for like tier bosses or for whatever it was, right? And so you start going, okay, like I know that there's only 17 people who need this tier boss. So these 17 people are in, and then what do we need to sort of fill out the rest of it? Like that would be an interesting sort of way to start figuring that out to a certain degree. It's more finite detail, but yeah, because as soon as people start getting those key pieces, you start just asking the question of who can sit, and you're like, oh, there's like 10 people who want to sit for this boss now.
I mean, I think, interest is also going to tail off a bit, and we'll be probably under that 30 cap before too much longer, but it's cool having everybody back, and raiding with the big group is fun, and we haven't really been super punished for it at this point.
Good. Yeah, the boss Tuesday. The raid is really good at flex. I have found that there's not been too many bosses and mechanics where like, dude, if we drop this whole raid down to 14 people, this boss would just fall over so easily, right? Like there's been very few of those.
Yeah, I haven't felt it really at all yet. I mean, we started feeling it a little bit on Nexus Princess, but
that's the one
that was about it so far. So yeah, Tuesday, we started with normal. We busted it out in just slightly over an hour, I want to say.
Nice.
And then I only had Tuesday set up for normal because I'm rotating people between normal and heroic and whatever. I didn't want to start the heroic ID without the people I said I was going to bring. So somebody floated the idea like, hey, let's do Black Temple. And I said, oh, that's actually a great idea. We can actually finish that around the end of our scheduled raid time anyway. So we just went and did Black Temple time walking with the full group. Took like 40 minutes flat, maybe. So like 2 hours we were done with Palace and normal, and with Black Temple. That's a ton of gear going out to the team. So that was awesome.
Yeah, let me highlight that for a second, because I don't know how many people jumped in on that, but the time walking last week was great. So on Tuesday, similar thing for me. I hopped on my main. I picked up the quest inside of Dornogal for completing time walking the 5 boss kills, either inside the raid or in dungeons. I went to Shatrath. I picked up the quest that was there. The quest that was there was to reward you a 610 piece, or heroic level piece, from Burning Crusade loot raids. So basically you're like, oh, okay, so if I do time walking Black Temple, I get normal raid gear from that raid, and I get the piece of normal raid gear for killing 5 bosses from the current raid, and I get 1 piece of 610 from the raids from Burning Crusade expansion. It was really lucrative for loot. It was certainly a great thing to see. I want to highlight this more when we go into the next time walking event that we have going on, that people should be taking advantage of this sort of thing, because it was really nice for that. Now I got a ring off of at a Serpent Shrine Cavern that was like 1,000 haste and 3,500 versatility, and I was like, this is a great Prot Warrior ring. Like, what? That's terrible on my Druid right now, unless I'm doing Guardian stuff. But yeah, it really is rolling the dice, since it's such a massive thing. But there are people out there who got like 610 weapons, or got really nice trinket, or got things like that could actually help them out in certain cases with their gearing. So time walking was a big thing to hit up. I definitely will highlight it more during the next go around. But I did it on both my Druid and my Monk. If I can fit it in today and there's a run going, I might try and fit it in on my Mage too. It is worthwhile doing whenever those come up. And yeah, it took me 45 minutes, took you 40 minutes. It was a great way to spend the time.
Yeah, it's amazing early in the season. And I mean, this was a change that came in, I want to say Dragonflight Season 3. Maybe it was a little earlier, a little later, but where the event quest to kill the end boss of the time walking raid is up every single time the event rolls around. Like, it didn't used to be that way. It was like a one-time thing ever.
Yeah.
And then they changed it, and then suddenly early season time walking raid became a whole different thing. So that was really cool. And it was also nice to be able to bring some of the people I had to bench for Wednesday into Black Temple just to get more loot and get that 610 piece or whatever. So that was cool. Heroic Reclear went pretty well. We didn't really have any big problems getting back up to, Nexus Princess was our next target. We had a little bit of time to look at it by the end of Tuesday or Wednesday, and it was going okay. Some people were clearly not really getting the memo about the strat we were doing. And
where the portals had to go so you didn't get sucked into oblivion.
Yeah, or just like how to react to like when you're the target of the laser beam that's going to move the portal. People were just kind of slow in the uptake and like not really hanging out where they needed to with the orbs, and the orbs going through the group is a big problem too. So we kept we'd lose like a third of the raid early on, and then we'd lose the second third of the raid, later on.
So like
and
beams
then
and dodging the
and then by the end of the raid, it's like, the tanks and some of the sturdy DPS, and we're like, okay, here's how it all looks. I picked it up Sunday, and I think we downed it with the full group, or maybe 29. I had 29 or 30 in for the kill. The kill was like super clean, and I think it only took us about an hour, maybe not even. So that was cool. Moving to 5 of 8 heroic after 2 resets was nice, and then we had plenty of time on Brood Twister. We didn't quite get there.
You went Nexus Prince before Ovanax. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I was just going by like WoW progress kill stats, and Nexus Princess seemed to be a bit more killed, and it seemed like a quicker thing to learn maybe. So I think it paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't feel too bad at all. So yeah, Brood Twister, like we had a couple pulls where people were dialed in and just broke the eggs in the right sequence, and we got pretty far into it. We had a bunch of pulls where people were just kind of freewheeling, like, hey, I got the egg break circle, I'm just going to go over here. There's an egg here. The fight is so much easier when you have like a plan for where you're going to break the eggs and when,
or
and
at
what
least
combos of ads you're going to end up with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or at least if people are breaking eggs towards where the boss is charged, so they're not becoming too many empowered ads. Or like you said, you're not getting like 3 worms on different random areas of the room that people have to try and travel to.
They're all 80 yards apart.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, we just need some more practice with that. I was really micromanaging it a bit. I got to the point of like, okay, after we move, areas of the room, I'm going to redo the ground marks and everything. Like your ground marks are going to match up with your DBM spam and all that. I think that helped a little bit. It's a lot of information for people to process at once, but it's not one of those fights where you can just say, okay, the 8 people that know how to do mechanics are going to handle this, and you just stay alive. Like, it doesn't work like that, right? Like, everybody needs to know the plan and know, like, okay, which ones are breaking next? Like, what's the combo look like, and what do I need to pay attention to once they break? So, just need some more practice on that. I mean, it feels eminently doable, but we need some more pulls. I think this week we're going to do normal one more time, full clear, get the skip unlocked, and then we'll just do like Ansarek kills to probably start the week, and then we're going to be much more in prog mode after this coming week.
Yeah, the thing about Ovanax that I wanted to highlight there is the nicest thing about that boss is it does get dramatically easier with gear. It is one of those bosses where it's not, oh my goodness, this mechanic's going to totally wipe us every single time when someone screws it up. Because worst case scenario, you get an empowered ad, and as long as you have enough damage, you can just blow that thing up so quickly that it's not that big of a deal. Like we got an empowered worm, we just kept it interrupted and killed at his range, and it was, dead within 8 seconds. And you're like, okay, not a big deal. We handled it. Move on. Next thing. That's what I like about that is it does feel like a boss that although it's mechanically challenging early on, as you gear up your raid team, it will get substantially easier because things will just die a lot faster, and you'll have more time to move things around, and you won't even get to the point where like the room's starting to fill up with darkness and you got to kind of deal with that. Like you'll just kill the boss too quickly. So I think on normal we killed the boss before we moved to the second cluster of eggs. Like we just did the first one and then killed the boss. It was really weird. Mm-hmm. So damage and gear will dramatically help on that one, which is good.
Yeah, there's a thing with I do have like one minor concern about like the overall tuning of normal raid, which is I feel like it's almost too easy because I don't think it's going to provide us much good practice, for these later bosses. They die so fast on normal with the amount of damage and stuff that our core team can put out for like doing normal raid even 2 weeks in. It's like, okay, well, the boss died before anything dangerous happened, so I guess we'll see what it looks like when we start progging heroic.
Yeah,
so,
there
I
is
mean,
that.
in a way, it's like a good problem to have because it's fun and it's very time efficient. It's cool to kill a boss super quick and get loot out and go on to the next thing. So, we'll get there. But yeah, raid so far, I mean, I think this is one of the best intro raids they've done in a really long time. Like, I do think normal should be easy. It should be accessible. It's supposed to be, friends and family kind of oriented. It should be a thing that a team like that can clear. I think it is that, certainly. And yeah, I mean, 2 weeks in, I'm feeling really good about where it landed. And, we're looking forward to working on some more new bosses. Hopefully we'll get Brood Twister down before too long this week and maybe start working on Silken Court. I think it's possible with where we landed and with another week of like big upgrades for everybody from Great Vault and re-clears and stuff.
Yeah, the funny thing for me, so I obviously raid on my main. I hopped into a pug normal on my monk. It was me on my monk. There was our resto shaman for our team was playing on his holy paladin, and then there were 3 of our other DPS on their alts, and we all joined. First of all, one pug group, and basically the 4 of them got in, and then they recommended I join, so I came in on my monk, and within about, I want to say 20 seconds of me being pulled in, I was booted from the group, and then the person who recommended me was booted from the group. So then the other 3 just left, and we're like, I don't get it. I don't know what that person's problem was, but apparently they didn't like a monk coming in. They're like, no monks. That's not allowed. I don't know. It was weird. So I was like, all right, fine. So we just joined another normal pug. We went 7 of 8 normal before we, as a group, left. We did like 4 or 5 pulls on Queen before it was like, okay, well, we may eventually get there, but I don't want to be in here for another hour and a half trying to work on this. Like, we're good. We did, like, one of our DPS got a Spy Masters out of that. I ended up getting the jewel crafting recipe for crafting sockets. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that was really nice that we got out of that.
Cool.
So there was
that's nice to grab from that.
There was some great things we got out of the normal from that people were enjoying. But I do feel like it's one of those raids that I think is well tuned, as you said, for like a friends and family style raid team to sort of get in there and be able to actually realistically clear the place. I do feel like heroic scales dramatically in those last 2 bosses. I think Silken Court gets a lot more difficult than the previous 2 bosses, and I feel like Queen is like 20 or 30% more difficult than Silken Court, and I think that is something that you notice with the raid a lot. So I do feel like a lot of heroic teams are going to hit a wall, and that wall is going to be essentially Ovanax first and foremost, and then they'll go to Silken Court, and that'll be a wall for a period of time, and then they'll go to Queen, and that'll be a wall for a period of time. So I think those last 3 are going to be struggling that way, and I think it'll be curious to see what it's like in Mythic, because I got a look at Mythic Silken Court as some of the teams were pulling it on stream earlier this morning, and the added mechanics, you're like, great, there's just like another split your raid into 2 teams, there's different colored orbs, if someone doesn't get an orb it wipes the raid, Halandra style craziness, and you're like, great, okay, this is okay, so this is gonna be even more difficult and challenging on Mythic. Looking forward to that down the line at some point. So yeah, I think the raid's in a really good spot. I'm really happy with it. I'm glad it's going well for folks. So
yeah, in a couple weeks we're going to have the zone-wide buff start stacking up as you kill bosses in there for the weekly quest too. So, I think that's going to smooth stuff out. On top of gear acquisition, we're probably like 2 weeks away from that starting. It's not going to start this week, but pretty soon, and that's really going to help teams get over the hump. I think, so that's cool. I mean, I think it just landed in a great place. Really, this is what the player base, I think, really needed, or even if they didn't want it, out of the first raid tier of this expansion. Because if we ended up in a situation where everybody was just, man, remember like when this is going way back, but remember when like Horadon came out and Throne of Thunder and everybody was just stuck on that boss, and it's like the second boss of the raid. We want to do this, but we can't kill Horadon. So,
and what was after Horadon? The turtle boss, soccer boss. You had to kick the shell into the turtle.
Yeah, right.
And it was again another one of those. Oh, hey, if you don't have a good person who can kick the shell, then you're just stuck. So yeah, that was
there's nothing like that in here. And I mean, and Throne was a great raid, but like I think and it wasn't an intro raid either, but for first tier, man, this is almost like Nax 80 kind of feeling for me, It's just like, all right, come on in, let's kill stuff, and that's the way it should be. So I'm thrilled, and I'm looking forward to getting back in there this week for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it too. Okay, Mythic Plus also was something that kicked off this past week that we all sort of dove into and had a good time with. And so I recognize the front of the show is going to be a bit longer with recap, but we do have a bunch of tail end stuff we're going to cover as well. So it's going to be another one of those meatier episodes. So Mythic Plus wise, this past week, I did break 2K. I was 2043 or something like that I ended up with for the end of the week, so I want to get my heroic piece. So I was doing 7s and 8s and 9s kind of idea as far as keystones go. I will say that was entirely not doable with random pugs. You had to do that with like a coordinated group that had certain people inside of the group to sort of make sure that you were performing the roles you needed to perform. We had the affix this past week that spawned in orbs that had to be CC'd a certain way. So even making sure you take the talents to handle that. That was Ascendant was what that affix was, in case people are curious, as the bargain was Ascendant. And that's where these orbs spawned, and you had to disrupt them in some way, whether that's a stun or an interrupt or a knockback, or purge them to actually make them pop. And then you got a bunch of haste out of that and movement speed out of that, which was great. But it meant that like, oh, hey, Typhoon is really strong. Actually, my favorite thing for orbs this past week, which I want to highlight, was my monk dropping Ring of Peace, because you drop Ring of Peace and then every orb that spawns gets broken immediately. Like it literally spawns into the Ring of Peace, the Ring of Peace pops it, and you don't have to wait for all 10 to spawn. You can just be like, oh, they're spawning there, Ring of Peace. All right, doing something else now. Don't need to focus on that anymore. That was really nice. They seem to spawn
like in the radius that's like the same size as Ring of Peace. Yeah. And Ring of Peace lasts for a few seconds. So yeah, as they all spawn in, they just get popped. Yeah.
That was wonderful.
It's I can actually do stuff about this bargain, which is fantastic, because see all of the episodes where I was complaining about Incorporeal and Afflicted. It is very visually noisy, right? There's a ton of plates that pop up while this is going out.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can break with almost anything. Intimidating Shout is one of my favorite tools because it's just an AoE fear bomb, so it'll break as many of them as I can get in range of, or if somebody else, doesn't beat me to breaking them all.
I think Shockwave was the other one people were using a lot.
Yeah, Shockwave breaks a ton of them, and I also got, I have a Stormbolt that hits 3 targets now, so sometimes you get those last 2 that spawn in late, and I'm moving away from them or whatever, just Stormbolt them. It feels so good.
Yeah.
And the buff is really nice. I mean, if when you break them all, it's like a mini hero or whatever, so, it is a bit visually noisy, but there's nothing else cluttering up the battlefield, right? It's just that you're just doing the regular stuff you do in the dungeon, and then there's that thing that happens. So I thought it was good. I liked it a lot better than some of the affixes we got new in Dragonflight. It felt pretty counterplayable to me.
Yeah. I will say an interesting thing that happened this past week is a lot of people were trying to build their routes was running Necrotic Wake and Mists of Tyrannosaith with the bizarre percentage that they were requiring people to kill trash-wise, because you have to pull a lot more. I don't know what they changed or why they changed it, but both in Necrotic Wake and in Mists of Tyrannosaith, I think it's almost 20% or 30% more trash that you have to pull to actually complete those, which it just felt weird to be in there doing that and knowing that I needed to do that. And there was also a lot of hotfixes that came in to try and balance some of the stuff. One of the big ones that happened to me early in the week twice was the hook throw for the 3rd boss inside of Necrotic Wake, hitting one of the orbs affixes that spawned in, so it couldn't hit the boss because it would literally surround the ad. And as you threw your Typhoon, one more would spawn, and then the hook would go out and hit that, and you just couldn't actually get the boss back down off the stage. That was really unfortunate, and so that got hotfixed later in the week, thankfully, that they actually registered that was happening, because a lot of people were complaining about it. So that was really good. Another weird one for me was on Rashanan inside of Dawnbreaker. The certain abilities can't actually target the boss because the boss is on that slope, which means there's no path available for you to actually cast something on them. Not a lot of spells are affected this way, but I know the orbital strike thing for Boomkins wouldn't target it at all, because it would just literally say no path available over and over again, which was really sad because it's a big DPS cooldown. So not being able to cast that's unfortunate, but there's little things like that still need to get sort of tuned out and fixed up. I will say, for those running dungeons out there, if you turn on Static Flight before doing Dawnbreaker, you will be a very happy camper. You have massively increased flight speed, and it makes everything absolutely nullified in difficulty for flying around to stuff. There's no physics trying to push you back when you're flying from one ship to the next. There's no, you literally have Static Flight on. So if you're going to do Dawnbreaker, just turn on Static Flight before you do it, and you'll be flying essentially as fast, if not faster, than the dynamic flying mounts without any difficulty at all. So that's a nice little tip for folks wanting to do that.
Yeah, it's like there's some kind of trickery going on with the way you like land on the boats in that dungeon. Who knows
I've
what they
gone
had to
through the
do
deck
tech-wise
once.
to make it work.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I got stuck inside part of the boat once this week, but like it's a little weird, but I've gotten kind of used to it. I guess I know what to expect. I mean, how they made all that stuff actually work and feel playable, I don't know. It must have been a quite a challenge, but I think overall, Mythic Plus feels pretty good. I think we're seeing, maybe some skewed expectations about like how hard the system should be at this point. I had kind of a frustrating start to the week because I was like rotating people that I was doing keys with quite a bit, and so I ended up just doing so many +2s. Because nobody had any keys, right? Like you get a +2, that's what you have.
Yeah.
And so I was pushing up so many 2s into 4s and 5s, and then people wouldn't know how a boss mechanic worked, and then they would become a 4 or a 3, and then we'd start the process over. So, and I didn't also like, I just had stuff going on, and I didn't have as much time to do keys as I kind of would have liked. I still did a ton of keys, but I didn't have as much time to play as I wanted to. But yesterday I ended up getting like 800 rating in basically a sitting, so that was pretty good. I'm up over like 1800, so I hadn't even done like Necrotic Wake. I hadn't done Grim Batol until yesterday, right? So like I said, gaps. So now I've done them all. I've done them all in at least like a 5, so I have like a decent idea of what the bosses look like and stuff. And I mean, there are, I think there are some that feel way harder than others. Like
Grim Batol is a good example. There's a few bosses in Grim Batol that are
the bosses are unforgiving.
The second to last boss and the last boss are very unforgiving fights.
And duo boss in Stone Vault was one I got stuck on with a group on a +6 for quite a while.
The duo boss, that's the one you're talking about, with the big cube that moves across the room. Yeah. The biggest tips for that for folks is always look for the empty vents the moment the vents start lighting up with fire. Look for the empty one, move everything over to that empty vent every single time that happens. And honestly, it's one of those fights where if you don't have a ranged interrupt, it's a lot harder, because you have to have a ranged interrupt for the caster when he runs off into the middle of nowhere. If you don't have one, then you're just going to take a big hit. So you have to have your healer ready for that big hit.
Yep. And the hit slows you immensely too, which then also the thing about moving as fast as you can to the safe spot.
Exactly.
And you got to kill them like basically at the exact same time.
There's no forgiveness.
The buff that the one gets when the other one dies is lethal. So, they just felt a lot harder than some of the other like similar dungeons at the same difficulty that I had done. So I mean, I expected they're going to tune stuff up, but overall, like, I can't complain too much. I think the system feels pretty good. We've had way worse week 1s of new Keystone season than this week in terms of that feeling that you're not going to get over the hump. Of course, Tyrannical had to be the early affix because it just always works out that way, which does make it a bit harder. But it's good practice for the bosses. So, I'm looking forward to maybe not as many keys as I did this week, because I mean, when you're doing 2s and +3 in them, it's not a big time investment, right? So the volume of keys you're doing stacks up. But I want to see what the other affixes are like, and how we kind of play around them. And I mean, we had a bunch of people in guild finish KSM this week and everything. So, we got some people plugging away, which is awesome. It's also going to pay big benefits for raid nights, right? I mean, it's just so much gear and vault choices and all that. So, I thought it was awesome. I think tonight me and some of the crew are going to get in there, so we'll see if we can get anything else done for the week. Maybe get some higher item level out of the vault, something like that. So, I might have one more night of Keystones for the week, and I think they took a huge gamble, I feel like, with this restructuring. It is a lot different, and players wanted something different. What players wanted was probably not this. Like, if you ask them, like, what do you want? I don't think that this is what a lot of players who were angling for changes would want. But I think in that 2 to 10 range, I think it feels okay so far. And obviously there's some dungeon tuning that probably needs to happen, and some bug fixes like some of the ones you highlighted. But, overall, I think it landed okay, and it has that added benefit of injecting that Xalatath kind of flavor and that overarching story into the Keystone. So that's cool. I mostly had a good time in there. except for the sort of frustration of like, okay, well, all we got is 2s and 3s. All right, let's do something low. Here we go.
Yeah, I'll say two things on that. For the first is, I feel like if a key is timed and you have a key that's a lower key, you should be able to re-roll your key for one below the timed key. So if I have it +2 and I just did a 7, I should be able to talk to the person at the end of the 7, and we did that 7 in time, and get turn my 2 into +6 something else. That should be what I'm able to do.
That'd be cool. Yeah, they're a little too precious with the key distribution still, I think, but
Yeah.
It only matters this week.
It only, as you said, it only really matters this week. I just think it'd be a great way for people to get an actual relevant key early on for something they're doing. If you're in a Mythic Plus and you're able to time it, you should be able to time the one before it, which means that you should be able to take your old key for whatever it is and turn it into something one lower than what you just did. That should be a thing. I just think it's a system that I'd love to see them incorporate. So that to me would be great to see. The other thing I wanted to highlight as far as Mythic Plus stuff goes is I feel like the system's a great system. I think it came in with people feeling like Mythic, like the number associated with their Mythic Plus was supposed to be a lower number so it's easier, in that sense of like, hey, it's a +4. This shouldn't be so bad. And you're like, no, recognize what a +4 drops at the end. Recognize what your item level is, recognize what comes out of the vault. All of that was considered when doing tuning for the +4. So if you are a 585 going into a +4, you're going to feel it. It's going to suck. That's just one of those things, as opposed to it being sort of what it was like previously in Dragonflight and earlier expansions, where it was like, hey, I might be in blues, but I can do a +3, no problem. That should be easy content and good upgrades for me. I feel like that's something that threw a lot of people off early on, was getting too big for the britches, if you will, of being like, yeah, let's I'm going to knock out 9s this week. We'll have all 9s. I'll max out my vault. We'll get some mythic loot out of this. And you're like, well, are you at least 610 eye level? Because that's heroic eye level. No, I'm 602. And you're like, okay, well, recognize the challenge you're taking on. And you might be able to finish a 9.
Yeah,
it might just take you
right?
150 deaths, but you might be able to get there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's it's roughly equivalent to like a 19, you know? Like I said, I was doing mostly 5s, which would have been,
15s,
roughly 15s in the previous season.
Yeah.
Or, well, not previous season, in the previous system, I mean to say.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it feels about on par, coming in super low power at the beginning of an expansion. It's not like I'm decked out from the previous season rolling into, like when we went from season 3 to season 4, we had this kind of restructuring of the rewards and the difficulty scaling, the numbering and all that. And I was decked out from season 3. Season 4 was tuned pretty easy. Just rolled in there and steamrolled it with all that gear and all the stuff they were giving you, and it felt great. Now we're all the way back at the bottom of the hill, and we got to start building it up again. But yeah, I'm seeing, like, obviously there are plenty of people who didn't really play the system in Dragonflight season 4, and so these are new changes to them, and also just maybe people who are more casual Keystone players to begin with, who are just kind of checking it out. And a +5 might not sound like it's that much harder than a +2, but the per rank scaling and the different affixes that come in, they ramp that difficulty up really fast.
Yeah.
The cool thing, I think, if you're more of a casual player, man, like the gear that you get from delves is like so much better than mid keys, and I think they're easier. I did a full slate of delves on the warrior. That was pretty easy. The warrior's up over like 611 equipped, I think, at this point, so she's just like blasting through. Did them on the monk as well, and that's feeling pretty good. Monk has some really nice tools for solo delves. I only got 4 in on the druid. I just don't have enough time. The fact that I got 8 and 4 on the monk and druid is miraculous. So hoping for some good stuff out of the vault tomorrow. But like, dude, what do you got to do to get 616 loot out of the Mythic Plus row? Like 7s and up, I think. I think 7s are 616. Like, I got it for me and for my play style and the typical kind of like friends I'm running with. A tier 8 delve is much easier than a +7 at the moment. So, it's cool. Like, I mean, my monk is probably going to have heroic 2-piece after reset this week. The druid might too, and the monk's up over 600 eye level. I haven't rated on it. I haven't brought him to any keystones at all. It's, you just slam some delves, man, and those 603s and 610s and your 616 vault choices really add up. So, I know like the tuning on that has kind of been all over the place, but I think as we start seeing what happens when you start tacking on some item level and brand starts getting some levels, it feels pretty good to me. It has landed in a great spot for my playstyle. I just don't have enough time to get like 24 of them in every week right now.
Yeah, vault wise, I would certainly say that the delves are the way to go for your vault reward for the week. I mean, I'll highlight that +7s, which get you the 616s, drop 610s at the end of the dungeon. So like you're not getting 603s like you are at the end of that vault, you're getting 610s, which is substantially better because you're on the hero track. This is stuff that you're going to want to catalyze for sure if you're trying to get your tier set stuff going. You get more loot at the end of a Mythic +7 than you do out of a delve. Like I do feel like there is some balance that they're playing with there as far as the type of gear that you get and how much gear you get. Now you could get really lucky in delves and get a bunch of maps. I had the fortunate thing this week where I had Zekvir show up inside of a delve. I managed to kill Zekvir. He dropped his bone on the ground that I looted, got a map out of that, used the map immediately, went to the end of the delve, finished the delve, got the bonus chest, got another map, and then was able to do another delve and get another 610 out of the next one. And now the other 610 was useless. It was something I already had a 610 or so in and had really bad stats on it, so I'm not going to use it at all. But I mean, Mythic Plus, you can target gear a little bit easier because you at least do runs that have gear that you need out of them. But it was a nice thing that you can get. And I do understand that there's some people out there who are like, yeah, I get like 4 maps a week and that just gears up my character really fast. And that's really lucky of you. Congratulations. I have not seen that. Right? Like
I think I got no maps this week and I did 20 tells.
Right?
Like I got a couple the previous week on each character got a couple, but
nice. Wow.
Yeah, I got no maps this past week out of those, which was a bummer. Cuz I mean that was the main thing. I was thinking like why, I'll probably get like at least one a week, right? And a 610 is for a character that's not raiding, not doing keystones. A 610 end of run is an absurd upgrade.
Phenomenal upgrade. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been having fun with it. It's just I don't have unlimited time. And I got to pick my battles. And right now, I want to be doing keys if I have people around, and I also have other stuff to do in life. So it's like if people aren't around and I could be doing delves, well, sure I could, but there's other things that need my attention as well. So I don't know, but I mean overall, like my feelings about this expansion, I mean, it's off to such a hot start. I don't even know how to describe it. Yeah. Like a buddy of mine texted me last night, who somebody I met through WoW, but who I know in real life. He is local to me. And we had been talking, a couple months ago about, maybe he should check the game out again or whatever. And he texted me last night just to check in and see how the expansion was going. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know how you can trust my opinion, because I'm like kind of a lifer. It's not like it's hard for me to be like, yeah, you should play WoW when I play it every day anyway. But I told him, like, the vibe I'm getting from everybody else is like the strongest sentiment I've felt around a game in many years. Yeah. It's not just the super bought in people. It's the people who have been actively out for a long time who are coming back. I mean, I think a Season of Discovery was an interesting bridge to modern retail WoW, because I'm noticing a lot of my classic buddies and stuff, and just taking a look and going, oh, this is actually really cool. Oh wait, I can do what? Oh, this works like that. Oh, that's really cool. Oh yeah, maybe I'll play some retail. And this is stuff that 3-4 years ago maybe would have been kind of unthinkable, right? Yeah. Like that divide was real. The game just kind of didn't have that juice, and lapsed players weren't interested in checking it out. There were the divide between classic and retail was really significant, and I think they've kind of turned all that around with making a lot of good choices over the last 3 years or so. I would say, second year of Shadowlands, as maligned as that expansion was, it's where they started to turn the ship around, and then we got a really great expansion, following it. And man, it's early, but it just feels like they took all that stuff that they built with Dragonflight and then just added onto it, just learned a lot of good lessons from it. And and like took steps that weren't some drastic departure into something that they were hoping was going to pay off. It's just stuff that, rewards players for engaging with the game and checking out the stuff that they built to do. So it's been really like, it's been kind of a ridiculous first month of the expansion when you think about it, as we sit here on the 23rd. If you had early access, we've been in for about a month now, and it's been a real whirlwind. There's just been so much to do, and I think a lot of the stuff they did really paid off so far. You know, I mean, we'll see how we feel in 2 months from now, but man, I just can't wait to play more. I can't wait until all my responsibilities for the day are done and I can sit down with my buds and get some keys or whatever going tonight.
Yeah, I want to highlight 2 more things, and then we're into what's going on this week. First and foremost, I think everyone's trying to find their favorite delve to run, because running 8 delves in a week is a lot. I like Takrathon as a caster. For anyone who hasn't checked it out, it's sort of down by the City of Threads kind of area. It is an underwater delve, which not everyone's a favorite of, but the last boss in that place is basically a dude who puts mushrooms under your feet and you have to run around from, and does a frontal and does a slam near him. And outside of that, he never melees you. So as a caster, you're like, great, all I have to do is move when there's mushrooms and not be in front of him, and I can just DPS him and he doesn't do anything to me. This is wonderful. So if you're someone who's like, hey, I want to do an 8 and be sure I get a vault reward for the week, because you can do non-bountiful 8s and they still count as 8s towards your vault, then I would say as a caster, check out Takrathon, because as much as you might stumble your way through, there's some difficult trash in there that can be kind of a pain to sort of get through. But if you get through all that, the last boss is pretty much a freebie. So be sure that you take advantage of that while you can. It is a tricky place. Be sure you're doing small pulls, but and watching your breath so you don't drown. But the last boss is super simple, and I know that can be the big wall for a lot of people, is especially with like the kobold ones where he's just running up and meleeing you constantly and picking you up and shaking you like a rag doll and slamming you into the ground again. As a caster, that sucks. It does a ton of damage. You're kiting him all over the place. You're running from him. You're like, please, Bran, take aggro so I can actually do something. Like, that's the whole time. So I like Takrathon for dealing with that. The only other thing I want to mention is while you're leveling, you actually are earning vault rewards. That was something else I noticed with my mage. I actually had a vault that I didn't know I had until I like hit max level.
That's cool.
And started doing stuff. So
nice.
I had 3 584 options waiting for me in my vault, because I'd done some world quests and done some other things while I was leveling up, because you do have to do a delve when you're leveling up. You have to do a dungeon when you're leveling up, because they do the story mode stuff that you're able to get through as part of that. Those all count towards the vault, which means when you hit max level, you actually have a vault, which is kind of cool with 584s in it. So you can check that out as well. All right, with that, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the Battleground bonus event, meaning Signs of Battle buff is up, honor gains from Battleground objectives and wins are increased by 50%, and there's a quest to win 4 random Battlegrounds for some marks of honor and conquest. This is a great week for all those crafters out there who want to get the PvP recipes. This is your chance to get that bonus, to get out there and get that bonus honor. I don't know if it stacks with the potions, but there are potions you can drink, or files you can drink, that give you bonus to your honor gains that persist through death. If it does, then it might be worth picking up some of those off the auction house if you don't have the recipe yet, or if you're not an alchemist, and getting in there and getting yourself a whole bunch of honor. You can buy up all those, tailoring and jewel crafting and blacksmithing and whatnot recipes that you don't have yet. It is also the PvP Brawl Temple for Hot Magoo. This is Temple of Hot Magoo with altered rules. You're able to throw the orb from player to player, and they'll also gain the debuffs that you sort of pass when you pass the orbs around. It is very silly, very fast paced, and a lot of good time. They've also reduced the resurrection timer to 5 seconds. So if you're like, hey, that's a battleground, there's a Battleground bonus event happening, I could just do brawls for the whole week and get 50% bonus honor doing crazy PvP Brawl Temple for Hot Magoo. You're right. That is a great way to gain honor this week. So be sure you're taking advantage of those for the week. There's a quest, obviously, like I said, to win 4 of those. There'll also be a quest to win the Brawl. The quest to win the Brawl also rewards you with some honor, conquest, and marks of honor. So it's a great way to sort of get a bunch of that done right away. Also, you'll get rep. I mean, there's also reputation attached to these things too. So always worthwhile checking out. Okay. The other thing you're doing is you're picking up your Call of the World Soul quest. That's going to be happening near the inn. Just be sure you visit the inn area instead of Dornogal. They'll have quests for the dungeon for the week that you want to clear. Last week was Arakara. They'll have quests for the weekly task that you need to do. It even has it for leveling characters. These things exist for leveling characters too. If you're leveling a character up, you can go and visit this area and they'll have something. I had 6 world quests, so I just went out and did 6 world quests on my mage when my mage was leveling up, and was able to get one of those chests that I could actually get rewards from. The neat thing about those chests with rewards, even if you do like the spreading the light one, where you're having to put 3 stones into each of the lesser braziers, you can actually still get a level 80 chest from that you can't open until you're 80. But it means when you hit 80, you can then crack the chest open and get your first 2 items for the week right out of those chests the moment you hit 80. That's really nice. So if you're someone who's looking to get yourself some loot, that's another worthwhile thing to do, is just bank those up on an alt while they're leveling up, which is a pretty nice thing to do. The world events, obviously, like we said, that you want to check out is at least do 2 of these, right? Is the special assignments for world quests. Those are the world quests that require you to do world quests in the zone to unlock. The theater troupe, the awakening the machine, the spreading the light, the severed thread packs, or the world soul memories. Doing 2 of these things will guarantee you get your actual piece of gear for the week, if that's a piece of gear you're still looking to get. And they also contribute towards your vault. If you're someone who's trying to get world events done for your vault, that's another thing that you could have happen with that as well.
Yeah, I just want to mention, last week was the first time we had the choose one, call the world soul thing repeat. And so our expectation has been that this would sort of be your weekly cash activity, and it didn't happen more than once in a row, right? Like, we got it that one time, and then we had other stuff. There was like the campaign questing. There was a thing about doing the Nerubian delves. I feel like that was probably to introduce these different systems or advance the story as we went through the first couple weeks. So I'm thinking that you're going to get to choose one, call the world soul thing on a relatively weekly basis at this point. One thing that was different this time was like Snuffling was out, but the Severed Threads Pact was in. But the Severed Threads Pact requires you to like complete 5 rumors and slay 4 rare creatures anywhere in Khazalgar zones. That seems like way worse than doing 6 world quests, which seems to be on offer all the time. So we'll see. We'll keep a running log going of like what we've been offered per Call of the World Soul, because so far we've seen 5 different things. The dungeon rotates. Awakening the Machine seems like it's been in there, repeatedly. World quests, and then there's some other kind of outdoor activity that I guess rotates along with the dungeon. So we will keep an eye on it. But just make sure that you are doing that if it's a character that you care about. You want to get your spark fragment and all that. So make sure that you have that on your list. And I don't know. I think, 6 world quests, I think, is pretty much the easiest buy-in. If the weekly dungeon lines up, then that could be like a 2-for-1. And if you're going to do Awakening the Machine anyway,
it's 2 for
right,
1.
for the weekly, that's also 2-for-1.
Yeah.
So, like a couple weeks ago, we had the World Quest bonus event, which is that like 10 world quests or something? So like that kind of lines up too. You know what I mean? So sometimes you can kind of just get the double reward for basically the same time investment. So keep an eye on that. I on an alt, I logged in and I picked up the Severed Threads Pact quest, and I was like, oh, this doesn't seem good, actually. Like, this seems like too much time waiting for something to happen, or like wandering around looking for something versus 6 world quests, They do have you can buy them for Kedge, right? For like 25 Kedge or whatever, you can buy a rumor or buy a map to a rumor, that kind of idea. So there is ways to sort of guarantee you find them as opposed to having to wander around. But yeah, Awakening the Machine to me is just my go-to. Like, it just is. Like, you get 2-for-1. You get the Awakening the Machine rewards, which are those chests that you can open out front of the actual event. You get the world events completion as well for doing the 20 waves. So that to me is like the go-to every time. Okay, world bosses. This is Orda, the Broken Mountain, the Deep Walker Giant in Ashkahet is what we are expecting is going to be up this week. This is the 603 eye level loot boss with your plate, legs, and waist, your mail chest and feet, your leather feet and legs, your cloth chest and waist. And it's a crit haste ring this week. The ring is the one thing that rotates. So be sure you're taking advantage of killing that boss off. Also, remember, you're going to get another catalyst charge this week. At least you should, based off the 2-week rotation that we're all anticipating it is. And so that means that, you might be wanting to do this boss and maybe get something you're catalyzing. It's always tricky when you're like, hey, what should I do before I choose my vault loot? Well, depending on what your vault loot rewards, you might want to do the world boss first, because you might go, hey, I got 603 plate legs, and there's the tier legs in here and a weapon in here. What am I picking between? Do I want tier or do I want the weapon? Well, now I got the plate legs off of the world boss. Let's catalyze those, and now I can pick the weapon. Like that is always one of those nice things to sort of fit in there, depending on where your item level's at and the content you're doing. We have Mythic Plus affixes for the week.
this past week was Ascendant. We don't know if this next week is going to be Voidbound, Oblivion, or Devour. So Voidbound is any mob that gets buffed takes reduced damage. Killing the Void Emissary gives players a buff that gives them 20% cooldown reduction and 10% crit for 20 seconds. So this Void Emissary spawns while players are in combat and starts buffing enemies, and these enemies take reduced damage. So you want to just kill the Emissary the moment it spawns, and then you get yourself a bunch of buff from that. So that is a nice thing. That's reduced cooldown.
That's sweet cooldown reduction.
Exactly.
That sounds like a good one. I mean, I guess it depends on how bad the Void Emissary is to kill and how buffed the mobs it's buffing are, end up. But I mean, we've seen ones kind of like this before, right? It would be in a static pack usually, or once you hit like a certain completion percentage of trash, then you would have like a similar mob like this spawn that you wanted to burn down for a big buff. So this one, I guess, is probably on a random interval, but it sounds like, because it says it spawns while in combat. But yeah, if that's the one we get, switch to it, burn it down, and profit off of that big cooldown reduction and crit buff.
Next up would be Oblivion, is the other thing we have a chance of seeing. This is crystals spawn and move towards enemies while in combat. If the crystal reaches the enemy gets 10% damage reduction. If the player absorbs the crystal, as in gets between the enemy and the crystal, or just runs over the crystal, they get a Mastery and Leech buff. This is like Boomkin's and Resto Druid's like favorite thing, is this Mastery and Leech buff. It's a huge damage increase, and so yes, I think this will be a very favorable one for players to grab. Last but not least, we have Devour, where players are periodically afflicted with a heal absorb while in combat. Healing or dispelling the absorb gives players a stacking 2% and 4% crit buff. Failing to dispel or heal the absorb will heal enemies for 10% of their maximum health. So this one's a little bit stickier, because this one you could see people not really managing to get the dispel or the heal off in time, because there's a lot of other damage going out, and this is a healing absorb, and it being one of those cases where you're like, ooh, you just watch that trash pack full heal because 2 people died or something like that. That would be really unfortunate. So I would say just be sure that you're using your cooldowns and your personals and everything else. I love bringing healing pots into Mythic Plus right now. They're basically lay on hands, because it's so much healing off of, you get like 3.5 or 4 million health back off of one healing potion. So it's a great way to be like, ooh, I'm low. Hey, the healing absorb just went out. Click, bam, healing absorb's gone. I get a nice buff, which is great. And I've saved the healer a bunch of work, and I'm at full health again. So that's just a really nice way to sort of manage that. So yeah, Devour could be a tricky one this week. We'll see if we get that or not. So it's between Voidbound, Oblivion, Devour. That's going to be your affixes that kick in right away. When you start doing level 4s or above, we're assuming it's now going to rotate over to Fortified for the week, since it was Tyrannical last week, which means non-boss enemies will have more health and deal increased damage. At level 7, you're going to be dealing with the death cost increase. That means every death inside a dungeon counts for 15 seconds as opposed to 5. And then at 10s, for those of you out there exploring it, you're going to be dealing with both Fortified and Tyrannical. And then if you push even higher to those 12s, it's going to be no Xal'atath bargains at all. Just straight up Tyrannical, Fortified. All enemies have a flat 20% increase to their damage and health. Crazy business that actually kicks in there. So just be aware when you're doing Keystones this week that once you hit 4s, you're going to feel that bump on all that trash. But bosses should be falling over compared to last week. Any boss that you were like struggling with will have 30% less health on that Keystone this week, and be doing 15% less damage if we're not dealing with the Tyrannical week. So that is going to be a welcome relief for some of those bosses that folks were trying to get through. So, yep. All right. Brewfest. It is live. We didn't mention it last week on the show, but it kicked off right now, and it's already going. It was kicked off 2 days ago, I think, and it runs until October 6th. So you got another 2 weeks until this goes away. It's going to be Sunday, October 6th. And yeah, it is certainly worth checking out. There are some new things for this year. There's the Home Brewers Sampling Mantle. It's a cosmetic back piece that you can wear for 200 prize tokens. Obviously, in Dragonflight, they also added in those bar tab barrels, as well as some daily quests for the barreling down and the bubbling brews. And so be sure you're heading back to Valdrakken to do those quests if that's something you're wanting to do. And then, of course, you can always do the Ogremar and Ironforge Chowdown Challenge, as well as the timed events they have there to get even more tokens. these tokens are not a currency that goes inside your currency tab. They're not transferable between your characters, but you can purchase different rewards on different characters, and obviously those toys and whatnot and transmogs are account wide, so that is a way to manage it. I was doing it on 3 characters this week on the downtime that I could find to do it, which was tricky because it's like, hey, want to go do Mythic Plus? Absolutely. Let me just finish writing this RAM really quick so that I can get some tokens. I'm not
get
doing
over to the Mystic
else.
Ward, and then I'll be ready to go do the Keystone. Yeah.
Exactly. So there were some rewards you want to get. You do need to do a couple of the dailies. You'll need the goggles that cost 200 of those tokens. And so if you can actually get those goggles that cost 200 of those tokens, you can then unlock a couple more dailies for that character, and that will help you out a lot with finishing stuff off too. Okay.
There's the intro quest too. I think it's the one for the Wolpertingers where they'll give you the synth brew goggles, and when you turn it in, like, you don't give them back, so you can hang on to those if you do that quest.
Right.
I was all caught up from last year. I got the mount armor even, and I got the new stuff that they added to the vendor. I think it was it the shield last year? So this year, the new thing is a back cosmetic that looks similar to the shield from last year. I think they did like a different color scheme on it, but it's a similar design. So this was the only thing I didn't have from the vendor. I logged in and I did all of the one-time quests around the event. You know, I did the timed, like the assault. I got that done, and I did the all the quests around the different events, the ram riding and the sausage eating thing. There's a one-time quest for that. I did the Wolpertingers. I went around and did the pink elephants in the other cities and all that. Went to Valdrakken and did the 2 dailies there. The
barrel,
yeah, and I ended up with I did Core and Dire Brew, all that. I ended up with like 208 tokens or something, just in about an hour of doing a whole lap of the thing. And then so I'm done with Brewfest, I guess. It's kind of a bummer because it is like one of the better in-game holidays. I do really like it, and I think the stuff they added in Valdrakken is cool too. But I don't really have any reason to do them. You can also get like the heirloom tokens and stuff with the Brewfest tokens, but they're not scaled up, right? Like we don't have a new tier of like level 80 heirlooms. So that's like probably not a good use of them. So it's like there's really I have no motivation to do any more of this because I have both of the mounts from Core and Dire Brew for many years, and Corin drops gear, but it's like a heroic dungeon equivalent item level. It is upgradable, so it could be an option, especially for trinkets or something if you're just looking to fill in slots with item level on somebody. But I mean, there's so much stuff to buy. I just happen to be super caught up from paying attention to it over the years and going, okay, I got to check these off. I'm going to get this many tunes going. I'm going to budget out how many tokens I'm going to get every day. You know what I mean? Yep. I did that, I think, a couple years ago. So now it's just like, okay, let me buy whatever the new thing is. But yeah, you can get 200 tokens on a tune like that from one day of doing like the intro quests and a full loop of the dailies. And you can also get if you do the bar tab barrels that they added in Dragonflight. They added new ones too, like in the Kazalgar zones. They're there. Yep. So I mean, I think they gave 10 tokens each, so that's like 100 just from doing the Kazalgar bar tabs, and then I think there's 12 in Dragon Isles. So that's 220 right there just from flying around and paying some gold. Yeah, there's an achievement for the ones in Dragon Isles. I don't think they added a new achievement this year, which is a little weird, but so be it. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people probably missed that if you kind of checked out on the, latter stages of Dragonflight, second year of Dragonflight or whatever. If you didn't really play it, then all this stuff is new to you. So don't forget it's there if you want to do Brewfest stuff, because that's an extra 220 tokens in your pocket just from doing the bar tabs in those 2 continents, and then it's like 20 tokens a day from those 2 pretty quick daily quests in Valdrakken on top of everything else. You could definitely check some stuff off your list if you take advantage of all that.
Yep, and for those who are curious, Core and Dire Brew is dropping item level 571, so feels a little low. Could be 583, I think, for Core and Dire Brew stuff, but still nice to get some loot in there if that's something you're looking for. Item level wise, that is on par with the max rewards for some of the world quests that are out there. And of course, at 6:15 a.m. and p.m., there's the 2-hour enthusiast buff you can pick up for 10% more experience. If that's something you're hoping to hop in and get, that is the opening and closing of the times for the event that they supposedly have little ceremonies for opening and closing for. Okay, hot fixes for the week. We did see some balance passing and bug fixing taking place for some classes, so be sure that you have a peek to see if you were affected by that. I'm sure you've probably already felt it by now, but some of these changes are coming in the upcoming week. We'll talk about those class tuning things a little bit later on, but be sure you're checking that out. Delves got another pass where they've been closely monitoring progress in Delves, and we've seen that the median time to complete a Delve at higher tiers has been longer than we'd like for the majority of classes, and they're going to continue to evaluate what might be needed to maintain the difficulty across tiers while also shaping the overall time that a Delve takes to complete, which I like actually seeing that they're sort of going, okay, what's the median for what's being completed by different players on different specs and different, roles, and trying to actually find a way to balance that out so that it's not too much of a disparity and is closer in line with the speed at which they're hoping people to complete them, which is kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's kind of an interesting thing for a task that does not have a time limit on it, because you can absolutely, if you wanted to, halfway through a Delve, just get up, go make yourself a sandwich, eat your sandwich, and then come back to your Delve. Like, you could totally do that.
I have not done that exact thing, but I've done many similar things inside of it. Like, okay, I'm just going to leave this here for a few minutes or 20 minutes or whatever.
Yep, and that could really skew that median. So I do wonder if they're using tools to filter out AFK time, where someone has not interacted with anything or moved in a certain period of time, and go and filter all those out of the actual chart that we're looking at for putting together these medians, so that we're not getting confused by, like, you know what? People who play hunters just like to AFK a lot. I'm just going to say it. They do. That's just a thing. So, maybe they're watching a movie. Maybe they go to the bathroom. Maybe they're making a sandwich. Maybe their mom wanted them to do the dishes. Whatever it was, that just created an outlier for that class. That's entirely a possibility. So I'm sure they're looking at ways to sort of filter that down. But we did see reduces in boss health, lieutenants, rares, all that health got reduced, and as well as the unique objective creatures. But Jason, you wanted to hop in there for a second.
Well, yeah, I feel like the fixes that they made to this end were really noticeable. The health reduction on the bosses and rares and stuff. I felt that pretty significantly, especially at the item level that my monk and druid are sitting at, right? Which is, a druid's like well sub 600. So, the combat times for soloing and guardian spec, they're really long. They're still pretty long, but I definitely felt these changes significantly, like right away. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like good changes. Let me check it out. And I went, yeah, this actually, like, it's. I think there's a point where a mob can be dangerous, but you don't have to be in combat with it for like 4 minutes for that to be the case, right?
Yes,
like,
agreed.
Okay, I've done the dance for 2.5 minutes, and I've survived, and I have mastered the 3 abilities that they're throwing at me, and now I'm just waiting, right? And now, granted, like, again, there is item level. There's a lot of character power out there still to get for all of us. Like, nobody's like 640 item level or whatever the ceiling is. There's a lot of levels for Bran to get, and I noticed Bran really powering up, like, as you continue to level him through the 40s. Like, his contribution starts to feel really significant. So, this is stuff that's going to smooth out kind of naturally over time to some degree, but also, like, do you want to antagonize people with this mob that just never dies? I think it's, yeah. Like, I do think it's, like, median time seems like a good metric until you have the cases like you mentioned, but maybe they have some way to, like, account for inactivity or whatever, right? Like, they know when you're sending input to the game, so maybe they can kind of, filter that out or whatever. But, I think, the tuning changes around that stuff and the time to kill on the higher health mobs, I think that felt really good.
Yeah, overall Delves have gotten a lot better this week, and I think they'll continue to get better next week. We also saw increases to Brand's damage by 125% across all damage and healing tiers. We saw increased damage to the damage reduction Brand takes by 80%, so he's less likely to die, even though he's standing in webs, which he tells us not to stand in webs and do. All those sorts of things are things that they sort of went into and checked. And then they also went in and did bug fixes and and some tuning passes to not only Zekfir's influence, the tier 9 creatures that are in there, and the lieutenants and whatnot for tier 9 delves for folks who are experimenting into that, but also just actual reductions in like pack sizes and things like that inside delves. So overall, they're in a better place than they were last week. Okay, normal and heroic difficulties and dungeon bosses other than the final boss no longer drop Valor Stones. So if you're inside normal dungeons or you're inside dungeons and raids and doing normal and heroic bosses, they don't drop Valor Stones anymore. So no longer will you be like, I'm capped on Valor Stones. I'm mid-raid, I better go spend some because I'm going to earn some off killing this boss. You're now in a situation where the bosses aren't doing that anymore. Okay.
This should cut down on, I mean, listen, I can't imagine that people would be griefing in this way because it's so ridiculous, but people will do anything that is considered to be time efficient in this video game specifically.
Yep.
So this should cut down on like, oh, I need a very small amount of Valor Stones. Let me queue up for a dungeon and kill one boss and then drop group, right? And then you're stranding people in queue and all that. Like, if
only you could farm wax puddles for Valor. I mean, it just seems like that might have solved that problem for you, Jason, right there. But
I feel like, Valor Stone should be a reward for various things, right? But like, you want to put them in this kind of group content typically, right? Mm-hmm. And like, I think considering sort of the behavior that we've seen at the outset of the expansion around dungeon queues and stuff, like de-incentivizing people from dropping after, mid dungeon bosses, it probably makes sense. You want to, like, obviously things happen, right? But when you matchmake a group together, the expectation should be that group is going to complete the dungeon. That's the way I feel about it as a player. Like, I understand that there are extenuating circumstances. There's tech issues. There's real life that occurs outside of the game. But when I click that button and we all load into the thing, I assume that everybody is in there to complete the dungeon together, not that somebody is in there to kill one boss and get out as fast as they possibly can because they have to get on to the next thing.
Yeah, a lot of the time that was happening in normals and heroics to bosses, but yes, it'd be weird if it was happening for Valor Stones. I certainly agree that I'm glad that's not the case when this is happening. They fixed some more bug fixes in the raid as well and did some minor tuning on Ulgrax, something to consider. Just basically saying, hey, Hungering Bellows is an ability that's supposed to ignore physical resistance, so we've buffed they've reduced the damage on Hungering Bellows, but they've now fixed it so it actually does, so just keep that in mind. As far as the dungeons go, we did see some tuning passes. None of them changed the like percentage of trash needed. I think they probably want some more iterations of people running the dungeon before they start making changes that way, but we saw some damage reductions inside Arakawa City. The last boss in there got some damage reductions, which was nice for folks to sort of feel. We also had Grim Batol fix an issue where Forge Master Throngus's pool visual could fail to appear when it was on stairs, which is really unfortunate if you walk over stairs and just die instantly because you stepped inside something you shouldn't have. So that was a nice thing to get fixed.
You definitely don't want to step in that, and you fight him like on a path that contains stairs. So yeah, I'm glad that got fixed. I didn't run into this, but yeah, that'd be bad. You're like, I'm safe from Throngus's molten pool of death. Oh wait, I'm dead, but there's no molten pool there. What happened? Yeah, that was that. So yeah, nice to see.
Similarly, Miss Caller had a fix where Dodgeball was dealing damage to unintended targets. So yeah, anything that's not intended should get fixed. That was sort of like Throngus's thing, so keep that in mind as well. And then Siege of Borealis got a whole bunch of little tweaks done to it, including Jaina Proudburn now teleports players to the correct exit location based on their faction. So Horde players are not dumping into Borealis and getting killed by guards. It's just one of those things.
That's good. Yeah, probably. They made a change to Siege of Borealis that I'm still dealing with emotionally because throughout BFA, right, and we had it like every season in BFA, you would come in, start the dungeon, jump as Alliance, jump down to the left to the lower docks. You can't do that anymore. It just teleports you outside the instance.
You can with an ability. Heroic Leap will do it, and Wild Charge will do it. You can get over top of the teleport. But there is a teleport there.
Yeah, but the rest of your party has to come with you.
That's exactly the problem. You need all druids and warriors.
Out of the... Yeah, I don't think that... man, I also have been running with like mostly resto druids, and the buffs would be appreciated as soon as we could get those things.
Agreed.
But yeah, like you can't like that route is just not going to work at this point. So just having to kind of relearn the beginning of it is a little weird.
Pull trash we've never pulled before in our lives.
Yeah, like literally maybe like one time ever back in 2018. Overall, like I think I was not. I mean, I don't love Siege of Borealis, and I don't love having it back, but I was afraid it was going to be worse so far. Like, it feels okay. I love the new visuals on Chopper Red Hook. It really helps understand where is safe to stand and where not to stand. So thank you for those. Like the big frontal on the melee ads, for example. And I think some of the bosses, they got like minor tweaks that just make them feel a bit more modern and a bit better to play. Last boss is so much better than it used to be, where you were kind of on this timer of like, how fast can I kill these tentacles before another one spawns? You don't have to worry about that anymore. So boss execution is super important, especially early season and with Tyrannical and everything. But it just feels more fair, I think, in a lot of ways than the BFA version did.
Yeah, the two things I have about Siege of Borealis right now, one is the boss before the last boss. The double waves really threw me back the first time I experienced it. I was not expecting double waves, and so that felt very tight and like crazy to sort of deal with, but I like it overall. I think it's a good change. And the other one was there's one trash mob, one dockhand or whatever, right before Chopper Red Hook, who just stands close enough to Red Hook that you always pull the boss when you try and pull that mob. And it's irritating, and I wish they would just remove or move that one trash mob so that you aren't going, well, I either pull the boss with an additional trash mob when I do this, or you move that ad somewhere else and you pull the boss, you essentially just reset the boss, which is what we have been doing. Is we do the big pull, we get that ad in it, the boss comes running with it, and you just back out of the whole docks area and the boss resets, and you're like, okay, it'd be perfectly fine if they just didn't have that ad where it was, but there's impossible to do that pull properly with that ad so close to the boss. So that's one of the little tweaks I would do with Siege of Borealis. Okay. They also resolved an issue where the map tooltip for theater event was displaying incorrect information about the current play. So for someone who was trying to complete all of the plays, may have been doing the wrong ones or showing up and seeing it was the wrong performance. That is unacceptable. It must be, the show must go on, and the show must be the correct show that's supposed to happen. So that is fixed. And then I guess we talk about a little bit Mythic Plus tuning that's now live. We did see the one fix that came in for Necrotic Wake, where, hey, they noticed that, those orbs were spawning and they were hitting the wrong thing. So that actually got fixed. So you're not hooking an orb as opposed to hooking the boss on that third boss. Zolramus Gatekeeper's Wrath of Zolramus damage was also reduced by 25%, as well as the Gatekeeper's enemy forces contribution was increased, which does help a little bit. You're still clearing a lot of trash. I still think you have to be 73 or 78% or something before you go up to the third boss if you want to actually complete that place, which seems like a lot of trash downstairs. The Surgeon Stitchflesh's Creations Festering Rot periodic damage was also reduced by 20%. And in City of Threads, we saw Izo the Grand Splicer. The duration of Splice reduced to 6 seconds from 9. It's a nice big damage reduction there as well. So that was
that's a huge nerf to that, and that dot hurts. Just a couple of things on the dungeon tuning changes, like the Zolramus Gatekeeper is like killable. I feel like with these changes, because the risk, but it was you would pretty much like usually go out of your way to avoid it and then make it up with some of the other stuff. I think like with the damage reduction and increasing its count, like I went in there yesterday, we killed it as we were working our way around up to first boss trash, and it worked out pretty well. So, maybe something to consider there. One thing about Splice for my warrior friends, it is spell reflectable.
Yes, it is.
And I believe that it's on a timer that's long enough that you can pretty much spell reflect every one. And like, it's not a thing where, you take like, you have reflect up because it's some kind of magic dot or something. Like, no, you put the dot on the boss with spell reflect and not on you. So keep that in mind, have that handy when Splice goes out, because your healer might be crying on this boss in general. You got to move around a lot, and there's a lot of like, there's the Crypt Lord slam that like does raid wide or party wide damage even if you're not in the circle, and then the dots on everybody, and then you got to run around because the orbs are flying around. So, yeah, spell reflect is really good, and I maybe just diffuse magic, like kick it off of you and put it on the boss. I don't know. I don't know if it's magic, but yeah. So just stuff like that. These little things that we're sort of experimenting with early days of the season, right? And like, oh, what can I do about this, or what's the counterplay to that? And yeah, reflecting Splice feels really good.
Yeah. I had a City of Thread story from this week where we were in there with, it was 4 guildies and 1 pug, and the pug was the healer, Holy Paladin. We got to the last boss, and the timer ran out as we got to the last boss, and the pug just went, well, thanks, and left. I was like, okay.
Why?
I will zone out and change to Resto Druid. We're going to 4-man this boss, which is what we did. It took us 3 pulls, but we got it. And so it's one of those cases where you're like, I don't get it, but that's what some people are doing. Like already.
Like it stinks to miss a timer, but like if you miss a timer by like a little bit and it's week 1 of Keystone season, like it's still pretty good to finish the dungeon.
Good ratings.
Get some end of run loot. Yeah, you'll probably still get some rating. You'll definitely get some progress for your vault. That seems like not the correct choice. But hey, maybe they had to go do their chores or something.
I don't know. It was a very strange thing to experience doing the whole run of the dungeon up to that point and being like, oh, well, timer's out. I'm out. See ya. And you're like, oh, okay. Well, I guess we'll just do this as 4 of us. It's just the way it is. Okay, class tuning adjustments. Now, this is something I'm going to ask players to go and look at for themselves. So basically, we got Death Knight, Druids, Hunters, Mages, Priests, all got touched for PvE, and PvP had even more changes for folks that are actually curious about PvP stuff. So be sure you go and check the show notes for the incoming hotfixes that are going to go live tomorrow. As far as Druids go, that 4% increased healing is coming, which is not going to be stupendous. Like I really think that needs to be like 12% increased healing, to be honest. It's a very weird gap that's been created. I was finding myself pretty consistently behind by at least 5 or 6%, if not more, other healers. And that's, not looking at the overhealing numbers necessarily, but there certainly was a lot of overhealing taking place there with some of the healers going on. But I do feel like that needs to be a higher number. They'll look at this week and decide what needs to happen. We did see Beast Mastery Hunters get Beast Cleave and Kill Cleave damage increased by 90% as opposed to 80%. So we got bumped up another 10% for you all. And they're struggling to make Fire Mages relevant. So that's a thing. We do know that they're also trying to make Frost Mages have a little bit more variety in their kit by boosting the damage on Glacial Spike as well as Ray of Frost. Ray of Frost being an ability that's not being used very much. So good to see that that's getting some attention. And Shadow Priest just getting a static 4% damage increase. So good on you, Shadow Priest. Check you out. Okay, that's the class stuff. I'll again, throw the link in the show notes, so be sure you're checking that out and grabbing that so you can have all of the latest updates that you need for your class.
Yeah, and all that stuff is out with regional maintenance this week.
Yeah,
it's Tuesday in NA and Wednesday in EU and wherever else your maintenance may be. It's not live at the moment. If you're going, hey, wait a minute, all my numbers are the same. Well, yeah, they will be until after maintenance. So, but yeah, I mean, we're going to see tweaks like this every week for quite some time. I feel like. This is what we saw throughout Dragonflight, the first entire half of every season. I feel like they were doing tuning tweaks, every week or every other week, something like that. We were kind of talking about this before we started recording the show, but they are in kind of a weird spot with some of the tuning because of their unofficial/official support of the race. And it's like, well, if there are outliers or there are problems, do we fix them or not until the race is done? Because a fix could really skew the race. So I think there's probably some tuning that needs to happen that maybe it's not going to happen until maybe next week or something. So, we'll see. There's going to be a lot more to come, I'm sure.
Yeah. The next post we want to talk about here is about missing items from guild banks. Basically, when a patch came in for 11.0.2, something happened with the patch that made particularly crafting reagents, profession materials from old expansions vanish from guild banks in some ways. So that apparently happened, as well as in some rare cases, other items went missing from guild banks. And so they've spent the past couple of weeks kind of ripping that apart, seeing what was lost, and doing their best to put together those packages of things that have gone missing and mail them to guild leaders. So that should be coming out soon. Your guild leader should be getting one of these emails, or not meals, in-game mails from a dev saying, hey, here's all your stuff. But they weren't able to necessarily get everything. So they're also apologizing for the long wait, and also, appreciate the problems that have there. I'm sure if you get the care package and you're like, I have a screenshot of what was in my bank, I know I had this thing, I'm still missing this thing, you can submit a ticket and see if you can get that resolved for yourself. But yeah, it's something that they need to tear apart and put back together again, and they're not really 100% sure as to why it happened. So they just basically said they found the culprit. It was a technical update made to support cross-realm guilds. That something in doing that was the cause of this. So that's all we know. I assume they know a lot more than we do, but that's all they're giving us when it comes to this sort of thing. So I appreciate the update.
Yeah. Certainly surprised that like this process broke stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's not great. It sucks that this happened. I hope that like I don't know. I don't love the we've reached a point where the result will be an incomplete restoration for some guilds. Like,
yeah.
How do you not have a way to restore the remaining missing items? That part to me doesn't make sense. You can presumably like just spin up the items and mail them to the GM or something, right? Like I'm
mean, assuming they
whatever.
don't know what they were. I'm assuming that's what they're saying.
Yeah, I guess.
I assume that's a caveat they're throwing in, because they're like, look, we don't know what you lost. We've recovered what we can recover from our stuff, but there's going to be people out there who go, I had 18 of these and they're not inside this care package. And then basically this is their caveat of being like, look, we got what we could get.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's bad. It's not great. The silver lining would be that hopefully most of the stuff does not have any kind of real impact on people's day-to-day gameplay. I mean, they say many of these items were related to professions materials from prior expansions.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool and fun to hang on to stuff, just in case or something. I don't know. Like, I do it. I hoard stuff in WoW all the time, but do I ever use any of it? No. So, like, hopefully it doesn't have any massive impact on the way people play the game. But, like, you would think, like, Blizzard should have known that stuff was going to break and have had some kind of disaster recovery plan that didn't result in reaching a point where the result will be an incomplete restoration for some guilds, right? Like that's not where they should have ended up. There should have been a better way to back up this data and go, okay, we're going to put it all back the way that we found it. Or like, I don't know. I mean, like a heads up, like, hey, you might want to move older stuff out of your guild bank or something until something, instead of just going, oh yeah, sorry, your stuff got lost. Oh, we don't know what it was and we can't put it back. I mean, it's not great service, but like the mitigating factor should be that hopefully most of the stuff doesn't matter in the War Within, which is to me is the important part, right? Like you didn't lose stuff that you actually need to use on Tuesday, hopefully.
Yeah, I still feel like this is just a caveat rider baked in, basically saying, hey, we're not going to be spending a lot of attention to tickets and CS around this issue necessarily. Or we've told our CS team, if you see tickets and stuff around this, it's best efforts. And, we're not expecting to make sure everything gets recovered if someone's claiming they had, 10,000 iron ore that was sitting inside of their bank, and now they don't have that 10,000 iron ore based off the restoration that they got. Like, I feel like that might be what this is, more than saying, hey, we know that we can't give everything back, then we are sorry for that. I think really it feels to me, so I hope what it is, hey, we know that some people are going to claim that there was stuff inside their banks and we have no way of proving there was or wasn't. So we're just saying, best efforts. But anyways, that's something that happened. It's a shitty thing that happened, and hopefully that builds new systems and processes in for the next time they run into something like this as far as mergers go. Okay, PvP Weapons of Conquest update. So this is from Kaivax, who says, we've closely followed the discussion about the Weapons of Conquest quest for the free Gladiator weapon, and we've decided to update it. Due to concerns regarding the current implementation of the quest, we took the opportunity to reevaluate how we could approach the situation. we'd like to try putting weapon choice back in the hands of players while smoothing out some of the rough edges that sparked your feedback. With hot fixes, we will make the following changes. The quest Weapons of Conquest will depreciate and be removed from all quest players' quest logs. A new achievement called Forged Weapons of Conquest will be added to the Feat of Strength PvP category with the criteria of earning 2,500 Conquest during War Within Season 1 on that character. Progress towards this achievement is retroactive, and you can review your progress towards it by checking your season earned amount on your Conquest currency. Upon completion of this achievement, you'll be awarded 2 Forged Gladiators weapon tokens via mail, similar to the Mark of the Spelunker Supreme from the seasonal milestone achievement is how that's going to work. So basically you get this token, you go to a vendor, you trade the token in for the thing that you want. The Mark of the Spelunker Supreme was what I got for doing my 2,000 above rating inside Mythic Plus. That's how I got my tier piece. While in possession of these tokens, Lalandi in Dornegal will offer weapons from her entire selection, allowing you to choose your preferred weapon. All two-handed weapons will cost 2 tokens. All one-handed and off-hand pieces will cost 1 token. Warriors are an exception to equitability, to equitably accommodate fury, and will find that their two-handed weapon options only cost 1 token. Once you have spent both tokens, Lalandi will offer her weapons for Conquest once more. As before, you cannot purchase weapons with Conquest until after earning the Forged Weapons of Conquest achievement on that character. That's character specific, not warband specific. Keep that in mind. These updates are planned for the next weekly maintenance, which is tomorrow. At that time, the seasonal conquest cap will be increased beyond the threshold needed to earn this achievement. As always, we would like to thank everyone for sharing their thoughts over the past couple weeks. Good luck on the fields of battle. Thank you so much, Kyvax, for putting that down so clearly and so cleanly illustrated so that folks can really understand it. This is the big thing for me, is it's pretty obvious what's going on, and that folks can really take advantage of this once it goes live tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the problem with the Weapons of Conquest quest, from what I gather, was that it would offer you a reward, not like let you buy stuff from the vendor. You complete the quest and then you'd get your quest reward weapon.
Yeah.
Except it seemed like the quest wasn't real smart about like what it was offering you. Maybe it was bugged or something. I saw some reports of people saying that the weapons offered for the quest reward like didn't match the spec they were playing. So that's, obviously not great. You don't want a weapon that isn't for your spec, right? But apparently it just wasn't, the rewards weren't what you wanted, and it wasn't like you could buy what you wanted from the vendor, right? With what you had earned. Also, the quest required you, I believe, to earn that conquest in rated BGs and epic BGs, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas with this achievement, it's just, 2,500 conquest earned during the season. So
yeah.
That gives people more flexibility for how they want to approach it. And then it should really streamline the weapon acquisition, because you should be able to just get whatever you want off the vendor. So I can't, fathom a guess as to like how the quest ended up being busted and apparently the way it was, but this seems like better behavior anyway, right? Like you're not making people do specific content to earn the conquest, and then they can just choose whatever they want off of the vendor, just like as they'll be able to do for offset or off-spec weapons and everything going forward after this 2,500 conquest threshold is reached. So seems like a good change, although it must have been pretty frustrating. Like I'm not a PvPer. I haven't done PvP in a while, and that must have been pretty frustrating. Okay, I got to the end of this quest. I did what I was asked to do, and now I can't get what I bargained for out of it. So, that does stink, and hopefully this is, this seems like it should work much better. Right?
Yeah.
Unless the vendor's bugged, I guess. But as long as you can get what you want of the vendor, then it's a big win.
Yeah, I'm overall happy with the changes. I think it's a smart way to do it. Okay, so 20th anniversary event is coming up. They've been doing PTR updates for this thing, and one of the PTR updates that's gone in recently was that you can now do the time-walking versions of Deadmine, Zul'Farrak, Dire Maul, East and West Wings, and Stratholme, the Living and Undead Dungeon. That you can actually get in there and check it out. and you can group finder with players level 10 and above to explore these. An interesting twist on how all of this is going to work is that time walking dungeons are now going to scale enemies to your current level, as opposed to scaling you to the level of the dungeon. And basically what they go in here dev-wise saying is time walking now uses the same scaling system as Chromie Time, allowing us to better maintain time walking dungeons and control their intended tuning, which I find really interesting, because when I see a change like this, I'm like, whoa, are they going to completely break time walking the next time it rolls around live, because stuff's going to be so out of whack as to how it scales? But at the same time, I'm like, but this is a much cleaner way to do it. I've never liked scaling my character down to like level 38 or something when I went into a dungeon to do it. That always felt really weird. And then your numbers are all over the place. You're hitting stuff for very high or very low numbers, depending on what expansion it was and where damage was at that time. And it was awkward and weird. Whereas I like this a lot more, where it's scaling the dungeon up to meet our level. And the gameplay will basically be, hey, your character as it currently is stepping through a portal into this equal level challenge to what would be like running a dungeon in the current expansion that you're in, which I think is great. So I like this change. I'm a little nervous about this change, but that's why it's on PTR. So if you want to hop in and try out some of these time walking dungeons, please do, and leave feedback for the devs in case something's really broken.
I have a feeling that this is going to mean that time walking gets a lot harder than what we've been used to of late. I mean, this may mean no more 40-minute Black Temples, but I guess we'll see. Well, it just says dungeons, so maybe it's not. Maybe raids do something different. I don't know. I like when time walking dungeons are, difficult on the spectrum of time walking difficulty, they feel really bad in my experience. Now maybe that's because of like the templating and stuff. They used to like template your character. I don't know if they still do this, but it'd be like, okay, you're this level and you're this class and spec. All right, your stats are this in time walking, and it would really drastically alter the way like my tune would play, because it'd have so much less haste than I was accustomed to, and then it makes the whole game feel different to play. Yeah. And so I guess we'll see how it ends up feeling, but like part of the problem is the time walking dungeons aren't designed to be like modern and current content, right? They're very old content in some cases, and we're getting a lot of old content with this event too. And they're not something that players are engaging with on a daily basis. They're around for like 1 or 2 weeks a season. And so people don't know how they work. And if there's like a particularly complicated mechanic in a time walking dungeon, then you can guarantee that most of the group is not going to know what to do with it. Yep. So, I mean, that could lead to just some really bad feelings around a mode that's supposed to be kind of just fun, So I don't know. We'll see what it ends up feeling like. Hopefully what it results in, I guess my hope would be that the difficulty doesn't really substantially change, but your character feels like your character, regardless of if you're in a heroic dungeon or a time walking dungeon. That would be nice. And maybe using the different scaling tech will allow them to kind of dial that in a bit better. I don't know, but if it spikes the difficulty for time walking, then I don't think anybody's going to be having fun with that.
Yeah. Other changes coming up that I'm super excited about. The first of which is a decent change, which is new characters that are created are now placed into the campfire scene if there's room, or directly under it for your warband when you're first logging in. Just keep that in mind, so it's easier to find that new character you just made. But my favorite change coming up is that reagents stored in the warband bank can now be used to fill all types of crafting orders. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I realized this too late, that this was not actually live and in the game. And about a week ago, I moved all of my crafting materials into Warbank tabs, because I was like, great, I can just use them across all my characters whenever I want to use them, and I can to craft whatever it is I want to craft. However, I can't use it for crafting orders, which means whenever I want to do a crafting order, I have to go back to my bank, take out the stuff that I need for the crafting order, go back over to the crafting person, and then use it all, which is really unfortunate. The other thing I've noticed that happens if I'm trying to craft a series of things, and this is something that isn't being fixed yet, but I'm hoping that me talking about it might help. If I'm trying to craft like 10 potions, I'm trying to craft them from stuff that's in my warbank, I can craft one at a time. It will not let me craft 10 in sequence of just clicking create all or create 10. It'll craft one and then go, can't find the materials. And you craft one and go, can't find materials for the next one. It always does that. So that's really unfortunate. So hopefully they can get that resolved as well, because that would be really nice. We also saw that accounts that fall under the age appropriate design code, the AADC, will now have the blocked guild invite setting turned on by default, which is great for those youngins getting in to actually jump in and try the game and play it. So they're not dealing with spams of guild invites and that sort of thing. And when logged into a character, the add-on list dropdown will now default to that character rather than all, which is also really nice.
It only took 20 years, but we got there. Like, I don't know about you, but I usually, if I go into the add-on menu, I want to adjust the add-ons for the character that I'm playing primarily. So like the smallest tweak imaginable, but man, the amount of clicks it's going to save me, for going forward from having to switch that add-on tab. It's immense.
Now we just need them to switch around the macro tabs. So the macros, when you create them and you open up a macro, it automatically takes you to the macro screen for your character first, as opposed to for everyone's macros first. Because I've also created a lot of macros for my druid that have just ended up in the everyone tab because I just didn't bother clicking over first. So
you're already there. So exactly. Why not?
Yep. All right. The realm consolidation update for Season of Discovery. This is basically saying, hey, they're going to be doing free character moves, and they're going to be open at 6 p.m. on last Tuesday. They opened up on September 17th, and they're going to be live through, in preparation for this, we've disabled character creation entirely on the Crusader Strike and Wild Growth servers. This block will remain in effect until last Thursday, at which time character creation will be re-enabled. Okay, so they've re-enabled character creation. So you're trying to create a character, you were not able to create one previously, you are now able to again. But what the post sort of boils down to is they are moving down to only having 2 Season of Discovery servers. You are going to be on one of 2 realms. They're merging all the other realms together to those 2 realms. So we are going to be seeing that take place. Basically, as part of this process, they're utilizing the name reclamation feature. This will automatically allow players to take the names that are otherwise on an inactive account. They've set the date for inactivity beginning of Season 4, Phase 4. So once any account that has not been logged into Vanilla WoW since July 11th will be eligible to lose any character names it has reserved if those names are requested by incoming or new character creations. Please note, customer service will not assist with game time requests or exceptions to this process. Interesting. We hope that this will give as many players as possible a chance to maintain names that they've grown attached to, but appreciate not everyone will be lucky. But ultimately, we believe this consolidation will lead to the best experience for Season Discovery players. In other words, the population has been dropping off, which we've noticed, and as a result of that, they are doing they're doing realm merges, which will make the world feel more populated for everyone, and allow guilds to have more people to recruit with, more people to raid with, and hopefully that this ends up helping the population overall in the end. So expect those to be incoming.
Yeah, I mean, like, part of the issue with just the way Season of Discovery is, right? It's vanilla WoW. That's the point and the appeal of it, but it's got gameplay tweaks. But what it doesn't have is the tech tweaks that allow you to play cross-realm and stuff like that. So, as Season Discovery rolls on, it's, I mean, we were experiencing it back as early as Phase 2, with just like, and we were on Wild Growth, which is one of the, mega realms, essentially. It's like, it's just, interest is low with rounding out a group among our community, and we just can't do it. Having bigger populations should help with that. It's kind of essential to something like this succeeding. So, I guess in a way it was kind of inevitable. They're doing something kind of interesting with the Oceania servers, because basically what they're doing is they're letting Oceania players transfer to NA servers. I mean, it's the same region, right, in terms of the tech and hardware and the billing.
Yeah.
And like, obviously your ping's going to go up if you're in Australia and you're playing on servers in North America. But it's like a 2-way move, so you can move back. If you really hate playing with like a 250 MS ping or whatever, then you can move back. So, unfortunately, the Oceania servers are sort of in this weird, like limbo between, because it's an NA, it's not its own region, but the region that it's in is nowhere geographically close to it, and you're just gonna have latency over distance. So, I think it's a decent compromise, at least. Like, hey, come try it. If you really hate it, you can move back. But yeah, I'm not really surprised, I guess, that they went in this direction, because you need a critical mass of players in order for like the multiplayer parts of vanilla WoW to function. So just keep it in mind. I guess like if you haven't been playing SOD and you're interested in maybe picking it up for phase 5 or whatever, just keep this in mind. Like, you will be playing, if you're in NA, you're going to be playing on Wild Growth or Crusader Strike. And if you have a character you've had kind of sitting around and maybe you haven't played, you might want to log in and just,
save your name.
Yeah, keep your name there in case somebody coming over wants to, maybe use the same name. Just a PSA on that. But yeah, it's I don't know. I've been getting like, I think they're doing some stuff with phase 5 that sounds really cool, but I'm just in a spot where I mean, I don't have time. How could I possibly find more WoW time to devote to it,
Yeah,
And
I'm with you.
no matter how cool it sounds, I just don't think it's going to happen for me right now.
Indeed. All right, folks, with that, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, Dustin, James, Kapawi, Max, Saucemaster 6000, Shorel, Rager. Thank you so much for all that you give, as well as all of our patrons past and present. And a shout out to our newest patrons, Colby and Garrett. Thank you so much for hopping in and supporting the show. If you're wanting to hop in and support the show as well, you can go over to patreon.com/thestartingzone, or you can go to thestartingzone.com and there's a patrons button you can click on that will take you to Patreon page for you. That was something that was recommended in our patron Discord. If some people want to hop over and join our Discord server, they can do that too. I'll tell you about that a little bit later in the show. Thank you very much. Yes, it is now added on our actual main page, but thank you, patrons past and present. You make the show, will show with let's just continue. Like, it would not be here without you all. It keeps the archives online. It pays for all the bills that we have associated with running the show and hosting the show and developing content for the show, for developing art for the show, all that stuff. It all comes out of the patron funds. So thank you so much for all of you who give and support the show.
Absolutely, yes. It's helped us tremendously over the years, and it's really helped keep the show stay on track in terms of production and your ability to find and listen to it. So thank you, patrons, and welcome, Colby and Garrett. Glad to have you aboard, and thanks for supporting what we do around here.
Yeah. All right. If you have enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, another way you can support the show is by heading over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. They really help out the show. They boost us up those charts and help more people find the show, and we love reading them here live. This one comes from Aunt Ravenquest in USA, entitled "Incredibly Consistent and Informative Show. I found this show towards the tail end of BFA and have been a listener since. Jason and Spencer put together an excellent show every single week. They have a great format and it is easy to follow regardless of your level of play. Thank you so much, ONT, or Aunt in Ravencrest. It is certainly appreciated that you went out there and took the time to leave us the review, and I'm glad that you like the format and that it's helping you with the play. I know we have a lot more reviews as well that have been coming in, so we're going to get to those too, and I love having new ones every show, so please keep leaving them. They're great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, On, for taking the time to write in and let us know. And man, tail end of BFA is that's actually a really long time ago, right? Like that's like four years now. I mean, somehow I don't know how that happened, but but so thank you so much for checking in with us week in and week out, and thanks for taking the time to write in. And glad we can help. Hopefully, we're helping you navigate the landscape of War Within here. We're still trying to kind of figure it out ourselves, but I think it's part of the fun of doing the show when we have new stuff is sort of just figuring it out. Like, okay, what did I do this week, and how did I feel about it, or like what did I do that felt like good or smart, or felt like I saved myself some time or something. Like that's always what happens when we have a new expansion, and we're diving into all these different things they put in. So. It's fun to think about and talk about, amongst each other, and then put it out there into the world and see what everybody thinks about it. So thanks for checking us out, and thanks for writing in.
Yeah, that's going to wrap up episode 650 of The Starting Zone. If you want to go to show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback, you can email us at startingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone, or you can join our Discord server at thestartingzone.com/Discord. You can just go to the main page and click on the Discord link. That'll take you there too. If you want to get your hands on some TSC gear, you can find that over at TeePublic, which I should probably put a link on the site as well too. So I'll make sure that that's there. It is linked in all of our show posts, But I'll put one up on the main page as well. That's teepublic.com/stores/the starting zone, where you can find shirts and stickers and phone cases and that kind of stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
The best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. And you can also find me on Blue Sky. It's just Jay Lucas over there for the username, so come check that out. You can find me streaming WoW over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. And I'll be streaming raid nights this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday, 7:30 Eastern, getting into, some more heroic prog and stuff. The Twitch drops are over, so if you failed to receive your Ghost Horse, then you have to go to eBay and spend $1,500 on a loot card.
Oh my God.
And I think this is the last week for the pet for gifted subs, so I will be running that if you want to come check out the Twitch channel. If you gift 2 subs to any WoW streaming channel, then you get a pretty cool and rare pet. So come say hi if you are so inclined.
Yeah. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or you can find me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.